Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Midweek Takeaway. Today we're joined by Tim Blake and Daniel Mailing of Hydrogen Future Industries. Welcome, gents.
How are things going there?
Yeah, absolutely. All good here. How's things for you?
That's great. Also, we're just coming off the back of our latest release with doing a license for Ireland, so exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you're alluding to the company announcement of the licensing and territory agreement to deploy its proprietary wind-based green hydrogen production system in the Republic of Ireland via Hydrogen Future Industries Ireland Limited. The company will receive up to €2.25 million and hold a 40% stake upon securing €1 million in funding for a pilot system. The agreement aims to harness Ireland's favourable wind conditions and governmental support for hydrogen infrastructure, leveraging HFI's advanced wind turbine and electrolyser technology to produce low-cost green hydrogen. Just walk us through how this whole licensing and territory agreement works, please, Tim.
Well, Ireland is a place where I've been dealing with Ireland for quite some time, a number of years, close to 10 years, I guess, on the energy side. And really over a period of time, we had a lot of interest in taking the technology to Ireland, especially under their current energy issues that they have. And it was really a natural step to bring it forward. So we sort of got together, people wanted to buy a license into Ireland that we still retain a decent chunk of, to really hit two sort of markets. It enables us to then get our technology out and demonstrate it in a particularly good environment in terms of, for us, Ireland has issues with a grid that's really at overcapacity. It's quite an old electrical grid, and they're desperate to bring in new industry, new technology, and they really haven't got the capability to do it as it sits. So taking energy into areas where currently the grid doesn't reach, so predominantly the west coast of Ireland, will enable them to focus their own energy on development of things like data centres. So it was good for us to do that. As time goes on, it will sort of grow. There's a possibility of doing manufacturing and the like out there as time goes on. But right now, it's really about focusing on production of hydrogen and also the farming industry.
So, Tim, Ireland's had huge energy issues over the time period. And also, it's, even from a government perspective, it's been very green orientated, almost to its detriment in terms of putting off gas that they've got there in the Irish Sea and all sorts of things. So how do you envisage that, the government and people are going to get behind this?
Well, as I say, I've been dealing with people within those sectors in Ireland for quite some time. So it's an area that we're not new to when it comes to their issues. Ireland, being where it is, sort of at the end of the gas line or electrical line.
That's right. It gets the leftovers, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It comes through the UK and then whatever's left.
Yeah, so, the average price of electricity in Ireland is 4.5 cents per kilowatt. The rest of Europe's about 2.2. So it's almost double. Certain areas got hit pretty hard when, for instance, the EU removed dairy quotas in Ireland, well, across Europe, which really opened up the Irish then to having to compete with the rest of Europe, for instance, for things like milk that had been pretty big within industry. They were suddenly disadvantaged because the cost of energy was double the price of other areas in Europe. With the grid getting away from those areas, the last couple of years, really, we've been to several events in Ireland where they've been trying to develop things like biomethane. Hydrogen's become more and more a topic over the last year, where they desperately need to try and lower their carbon emissions. So Money Point's a really expensive problem for them. It's a big power station on the west coast near Shannon. And lowering those carbon levels whilst increasing their energy capacity is a big problem. Really, they need to increase the size of the grid, but that's just too expensive. So you need solutions that can be off-grid, but also green, and then maybe supply backup for the likes of data centres and other sort of new industry. So with doing that, the West Coast, obviously Ireland's perfect for hydrogen. It's windy and it's got a lot of water. two things you really need in our case to produce hydrogen.
There's no doubt there's a lot of water in Ireland and a lot of water from the sky as well.
Yeah, exactly. So the West Coast, I mean, ironically, the West Coast can be too windy for current in turbines. It's pretty turbulent. It suits our system well, and there's not a lot of energy. They're desperate to develop industry on the West Coast. They have done for years, but the grid really is centred around Dublin and Belfast. There's very little for the rest of Ireland. You can't just suddenly rock up with some industry on those coasts of any size. So hopefully that fits into what we're doing. And the farming side, just to sort of nail that down, the farming side, we've been dealing in the past dealt with some of the large dairy producers in Ireland. And the large cooperatives own 6,000-7,000 farms apiece. And just trying to take those off the grid would be substantial and try and lower their costs. And farmers like that kind of side. Just the dairy side in Ireland alone is a ridiculous amount of energy each year that is required to do that. So so it sort of fits in. It will take time, but it fits into our system really well.
So Dan, tell us a little bit about the finances in this situation, both from the licensing agreement and also, the potential to sell the systems and obviously to benefit from the shareholding in HFI Ireland.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thanks, Kevin. Look, we've set up this structure sort of intentionally to be Irish-based and owned. Yeah, that opens us up to a suite of for the EEIS and sort of other grant type opportunities that we've identified, within country. It's also very important this has an Irish feel to it in terms of equity ownership. We see ownership coming outside of the government sort of set up as well. Private investors and groups that are keen to support, local industry and use our system to do so. So look, the broad structure is over a 10 year with another 10-year option. HFI will have the right to sort of sell, distribute and assemble our system in country, and for doing so, there's up to 2.25 million euros in a license fee that comes back to HFI PLC sort of over that period. So for us, it focuses our sales pipeline into that country with the team that we're working with, but also provides us options down the track in terms of how we manufacture and move forward in terms of the product ready version of our system. So the intent is to go out and secure non-dilutive financing to the tune of around €1 million. That fits well within our budgeted costs for a decent sized pilot of our system. I think for us, we really use pilot opportunities and funded pilot opportunities like we see here through this structure, possibly in other territories as well.
Yeah, the manufacturing, the sales, etc., it fits in with us. Fortunately, with the way the system is, we're kind of fortunate that we have a complete solution for energy. I can't think of anybody else really that does in this particular field. So manufacturing of the turbine is really quite a simple solution for us to set up in a country to do that country. Because with turbines, they're too big to stick on trucks completed. So you always assemble them on the site. Slightly different with other parts. But for us, it just supplies us a sales avenue for a system that's our first commercial scale, really. It's the whole market for Ireland fits around our first unit without having to go too big.
So I was just going to say, Tim, so, I mean, have you had sort of conversations and how confident are you that, that the government are going to get behind that with the support, obviously, and also potential funding to accelerate the development of the business in Ireland?
Yeah, the Irish sort of operating side are very confident that they will get those people on board. I've had conversations with them in the past in terms of with the grant sort of side, and there is a lot more support. It's different to the UK. It operates differently. Obviously, it's EU funding. I think we're pretty confident that side will come through. It ticks so many boxes for what they need right now, what they're trying to push and get. You also got to remember in Ireland, a huge benefit that we do have potentially over other companies is that Ireland is still trying to get planning through for offshore wind. There's very little stomach for the large onshore turbines. So actually the smaller ones we're not so bad with. the energy requirements from the offshore wind, because of the sort of lag that's been created in Ireland to do offshore wind, means it's probably going to be 2033, 2035 before they start installing the next round of offshore wind. We haven't got that problem. And certainly with Ireland, being sort of the first sort of stake in the ground, I suppose, in that respect, means that we can supply systems far quicker than potentially other companies can that currently got backlogs in other areas.
So where else do you think this is likely to move to, though? I mean, obviously, when we've had discussions before, Tim and Dan, you've been talking about putting this in mining projects. What is happening in the US in terms of the mining projects that you were involved in? I know we can't mention any names who was involved with, but can you give us any updates on that? Also, where else is it going to go? Where else is it windy and wet?
Yes, quite a few places. It doesn't need to be as windy for us either. But with the mining side is still probably our most important market as we see it. We're still heavily involved with the mining company that can't be named. That's moving forward well. Actually, there's
This would be a golden time when we're able to say this name, I think.
Exactly. And, that side's going really well. We've actually got more sort of bits and pieces coming across this week. Well, it'll be next week now, I guess. But that's going well. We've also got some other high-profile collaborations that will come out over the next few months. But mining is still very much there for us. I mean, it's a huge, huge market. It's a market that's got to change, probably more so than any other market. When you look at the size of mining, the fact it accounts for 10% of all energy consumed on the planet, and 40% of that is diesel and oil. If they want to go electric, they've got to do it, but they've got to do it in a clean way. So it's a huge opportunity for us with a large group. That's going well. Other areas, we're trying to focus on what fits initial stages. And we're also pretty flexible in terms of we've got obviously the energy system where we create the green hydrogen, and actually we have other deals in place with other components for storage and fuel cells that we can supply everything from generation through to power utilization. With the system broken down, we have an electrolyser and we have a turbine that can be sold individually as well. So there's some other work going on in other areas of Europe. And again, those announcements will probably come out over the next 2 or 3 months.
So as this rolls up, and I presume if this is the model, Dan, then the scenario is that Hydrogen Future Industries will then hold sort of SPV vehicles or other companies, if you like, in its portfolio in each one of these particular jurisdictions that it moves into. So would that be correct?
Yeah, look, that makes sense, especially in those jurisdictions where there's been, some non-dilutive financing come our way to help establish a pilot facility. I think there may well be sector-based sort of initiatives put in place. Again, the mining sector is massive. It would dwarf anything else 100-fold. So, landing the large client there that we've been working on for a number of years now is, that's game-changing, and we'll throw everything we can behind that. But in the meantime, these smaller licenses, I guess, in terms of the financial impact, sort of demonstrates to people that, there is some commercial momentum here in what we're doing, and some value sort of benchmarks that we're trying to put out there. We already have a suite of IP that is valuable under anyone's measure. We are at the moment, unfortunately, subject to a public market valuation in difficult sort of capital markets. There's underlying business opportunities that will sort of transcend those valuations. And, this is an example of that. So if we can roll out that license model in a couple of chosen jurisdictions with the right partnering and non-dilutive financing in place, that only strengthens the overall value of the Topco PLC, especially when we maintain control over how things get manufactured.
Yeah, and that's, to be clear, is that you don't need to raise money within Hydrogen Future Industries for this Irish proposition. That's for them to raise through granting high net worth individuals within HFI Ireland, I presume.
That's absolutely correct. And you'll see there the structure. The structure becomes more real to us once that financing falls in place into the associate company SPV. So for now, they're paying us the right through a licensing fee to go and sort of help them, track at the pipeline and close off their financing discussions. As soon as they close, we've got a fully funded pilot plant at minimal risk to us. And also, we're being paid, for the right for them to go and do that. So it's a nice little kicker for us. And again, demonstration on how this business can go and grow and build without necessarily going and diluting our topco structure.
Yeah, it seems like one of those situations where we have another one in Commentator, which is almost like a blue sky thing where it can just be multiplied with very little additional effort. Do you see that yourselves, or is that just my imagination?
Look, I think Tim would be the first to say we're on a development pathway here, and that does require capital. How we source that capital is up to everyone around our technology to try and deliver on it. People are seeing that we've got credibility and endorsement of the tech through the partnering that we've got. We've already got this large mining company that we can't talk about. We've got the University of Bristol who are also teaming up and providing effectively staff, premises, know-how, and probably the first ride over some of their technology to deploy as part of our system. You've now seen a group in the country that's going to be influential in us possibly being that flagship technology to become a green source of energy within that country. So yeah, we're excited about how things can go, but it is a development play, and any development requires capital. So yes, those with capital, there's an opportunity to come and talk to us. That's for sure. But hopefully we're minimising dilution at the top going through those discussions.
Yeah, and once you've potentially got this non-dilutive funding, how long do you envisage? I'm obviously not going to hold you to a date, but how long would you anticipate the pilot plant to be, brought online within?
I think the plan is to have something up and running within the year, or within a year, not within this year. That really is pretty fluid in terms of we're just finalising the results from the turbine out in the US. That will then lead on to larger versions, which are the versions that are going into Ireland. So I would say probably 12 months, maybe before. Some other stuff going on there, which will be linked into the farming sector. So there's talks going on with that now, which is really exciting for us. We have a tie, just to add to that, we have a tie-in actually with Bristol University where we have a farming scenario there, and it may well be that we utilise that as a demonstrator for the UK, which will be very similar to what will be going up in Ireland.
Tim, if you were able to get, let's say, 10 to 15% of the farmers on the west coast of Ireland to buy into this, how many systems do you think would be in play, and how would you then financially benefit from that through HFI Ireland?
10-15% is going to be around about 700-800 farms with the group that we're talking with. Each of those, we're doing on a 6-metre turbine, would probably have between 3 to 5 turbines. So you're looking at several thousand turbines in reality, and you're sort of selling at a price, that kind of size turbine, at around about $1.2 to $1.5 million per megawatt. So it would be a substantial amount of money. Trying to add it up in my head quickly, but enough is probably the answer. Enough to keep
enough. Are we talking about the spend would be hundreds of millions in that case?
On that size, yeah. I mean, I would say it's certainly tens of millions, potentially more.
And how does HFI benefit from that then? From the percentage, do you benefit on the ongoing situation or just on the purchase of the units?
Well, pretty much on both. So there's obviously the sale of the equipment. So it's turbines and hydrogen production side and storage. So there's actually a number of bits you're paying out for there. Then also, obviously, with owning a percentage of that company, you get the sort of, as Dan put it, dividend side off the back of that.
Okay, so all of the sales in terms of the equipment would all come to the topco, but all of the other money would...
all the initial sales will be, unless the manufacturing is licensed out, where we'd be taking a percentage, I guess, the royalty from it. All that sale will go into the topco, unless, as I say, another deal is done at a later date for some kind of manufacturing. Ireland could be a really good place to do manufacturing for several reasons, but it's something that we've really got to investigate fully before we jump into one place or another when it comes to manufacturing.
And then the ongoing fees, then how do the farmers pay you for having that equipment?
Again, that's really got to be decided. There's numerous models. You can either lease. I suppose it depends what works best for the farmers. You can lease, you can buy, you can even do models where you do it by the energy produced. But the reality is, I think they'd probably lease the units, possibly purchase the units. So it would be, if it's leased, it's through a lease company, in which case, you're still getting your money as if you're selling it. So there's a few options.
Okay, very good.
With other bits of technology, the electrolyser, for instance, you're more likely to lease that with a maintenance contract. So really, you'll be bringing money in over maybe a 20-year period in that kind of technology, rather than just an instant sale and forget.
On that note, I think we'll say Tim Blake and Daniel Mailing of Hydrogen Future Industries, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. Look forward to talking soon.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net